Hello, this is Sarah Kern, Guidance Chairperson from Suffern High School, and I am happy to say we are again partnering with Siena College to bring you a financial aid presentation that will hopefully help our senior families navigate the financial aid process. In just a moment, you will hear from Ms. Kathleen Hess, Assistant Director of Financial Aid at Siena College, and hopefully all of your questions will be answered.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Financial Aid Night. I am disappointed that I'm not able to join you in person this year, but we figured that this was a great alternative in the meantime to still get you the financial aid information that you need. My name is Kathleen Hess, and I am from Siena College. I'm here to kind of go through just a general process with you. And at the end, we would normally open it up for questions, but I will give you my contact information at the end so that you can, shoot me an email, send me, a phone call, and we can get all of your questions answered from there. So first, the thing that we always like to talk about is this myth that most students will pay sticker price for college. That's just simply not the case. In fact, at Siena, most of our students do not pay sticker price. 97% of our students receive some form of financial aid that lowers the sticker price. The sticker price is that scary cost of attendance number that includes tuition fees, room board if your student's living on campus, and that can really make you shy away from applying to a college for one reason or another. What this tells us is we really encourage you to file the FAFSA, apply to a school, and first see what your financial aid package is at that school before you, just eliminate it completely. So the first step of the financial aid process is completing the 2021-2022 FAFSA. I know it's crazy to look at those years. It feels like 2020 is flying by, but if you are a senior, you will be completing this year FAFSA because you'll be a freshman in 2021. This is the website for the FAFSA. A couple things with this is you do want to make sure that you're at the .gov site. It is a government site. You want to make sure that you're not at a .com or a .net. Every year we have a couple families that accidentally fill it out at one of those sites, and the information is not going to the government, it's going elsewhere, and it's obviously very sensitive information that you're filling out the FAFSA with. So you do want to make sure that you're at the .gov site. This site is also free. The FAFSA should be free. It's part of the acronym of FAFSA. So you do want to make sure that you're not paying for the FAFSA. That's a big red flag that you're in the wrong place. The FAFSA opened on October 1st for you to be able to actually go in and fill out. We at Siena recommend the sooner the better. The sooner we have your FAFSA, the sooner that you're accepted, the sooner we can send you a financial aid package. And this year's FAFSA, you will be using 2019 tax information. So this has been a change within the last 5 years where we're actually using prior tax year information instead of just prior tax year information. So it's 2 years prior to when your student would be a freshman at college. So just keep that in mind. That's the tax documentation that you're going to want to have before you go in and fill out the FAFSA. And then there are other financial aid applications. At Siena, we do try to keep it as easy as possible. We just need the FAFSA, whereas other schools may need further applications. The most common secondary one is going to be the CSS Profile. Unlike the FAFSA, where it just asks for 1 year of tax information, the CSS is actually going to ask for 3 years of tax information. So it's a lot of information. It's pretty long to fill out. So do make sure that if you are filling it out, that it's because a school requires it. You don't want to actually go in and fill it out if the school doesn't require it. This is going to have various different deadlines, and it is going to ask for a lot more information than the FAFSA is. The CSS also costs money. And it costs money per school that you're sending it to. So another reason that you really want to make sure that you're only filling it out if the school requires it. And then schools can have their own school applications. So these can be through their college. So you just want to make sure, take some time, visit the financial aid websites of the schools, and just make sure that beyond the FAFSA, you're not missing deadlines for any other applications. So when you're completing the FAFSA, kind of a couple tips and tricks that we find that are the most valuable. The FSA ID you're going to need for both a parent and a student. We recommend creating this FSA ID at least 72 hours, 48 hours before you want to sit down and actually complete the FAFSA. The FSA ID, I kind of relate it to a social security number. It's unique to you as a person. And so it does take a little bit of time to generate. So do give it some time before you're actually ready to sit down and fill out the FAFSA. This will stay with you for all 4 years, so do make sure that you're putting the ID for both the parent and the student somewhere safe. Only one parent needs an FSA ID to actually sign the FAFSA. When you're filling out the FAFSA, U refers to the student. The FAFSA assumes that the student is the one filling out the application, even though, as I'm sure most of you are probably aware, and I know I see it all the time, most of the time it's the parent filling it out. I do always recommend that a parent and a student sit down and do it together. The parent is oftentimes going to know the financial information side of things, and the students, let's be honest, are the most tech savvy of any of us. So they can really navigate the form kind of the best since it is an online form. So that's what I recommend, but I've seen it done. I've seen students do it themselves. I've seen parents do it by themselves. So it's really whatever your preference is. And then some questions we get oftentimes for dependent students. If parents are married, both parents would need to be on the FAFSA, as would their financial information. Even though we just need an FSA ID for one parent, both parents still would need to be included on the FAFSA. If parents are divorced or separated or were never married, the only parent that needs to be on the FAFSA is the parent that the student spends more than 50% of their time with. If that parent is then remarried, then that step-parent would also have to be included on the FAFSA. We get lots of questions on this a lot of the time, especially when it comes to the 50, more than 50% of the time. Really, we talk about it as there's 7 days in the week. The student's probably spending 4 days with someone and 3 days with another. So really, it's who the student is spending the most time with. It's not who claims them on their taxes or anything like that. And then the IRS data retrieval tool, we really highly recommend, and kind of can't recommend enough, that you fill out the FAFSA using this tool if it gives you the opportunity to. So when you get to the financial information data point, it's going to ask if you want to link your FAFSA with the IRS. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to pull in all of your tax information. This ensures that the information is correct. It saves you a lot of time. And if your student was selected for a verification audit by the federal government, which would happen later and down the line, it again just ensures the information is correct. So you have to provide your school with less documentation. Expected family contribution. So at the beginning, we talked about that scary number, the cost of attendance. So that's the total cost for the school before any financial aid. We use that number in the financial aid calculation, and we also use this other number, which is called the expected family contribution, or EFC. So these are the data elements that go into creating your EFC. The EFC is generated after you fill out the FAFSA, and that's what's sent to your colleges. And the EFC really takes into account adjusted gross income, taxes paid, family size, the number of students that you have in the household that are going to college more than half time, and then assets. So really what this is this is the best estimate that the FAFSA is going to give your schools on how much you can pay for college per year. And then special circumstances. This is always an important slide that we talk about. It's always super important no matter the year, but especially this year with everything going on with the pandemic, the special circumstances are really important to communicate to your schools about. These examples can be job loss, medical expenses, divorce or separation, as well as private K through 12 education. So what a change of circumstance is it's anything that's going to impact your FAFSA. So it's anything that in the last 2 years since you filed your 2019 taxes has changed. So especially with the job loss or change, for instance, in 2019, you had a certain job, you were making a certain amount of money, and in the last 2 years, you've actually switched jobs for a lower amount of money, or you've lost your job and had a period of time with no income. What we as schools can do is we can actually adjust your FAFSA to reflect those financial changes. Communication is absolutely key. If you don't reach out to us about these things, we're not going to know about it. So it's really important that you do communicate with your schools and communicate with them early. I've already gotten, a few families that have reached out already that have freshmen for next fall that have these change of circumstances, and we're already starting to gather some documentation. This process will require you to send the school some documentation. So I do recommend that you wait until your student has it narrowed down to, 5 to 6 schools at least, since you will have to send, a decent amount of documentation usually for schools. And then the financial aid package. So you guys have looked at schools, you've been admitted, you've filled out the FAFSA, and then what we send you is your financial aid package. The first thing that we do as a school once we get your acceptance and have your estimated family contribution number from the FAFSA is we take that scary number that we talked about at the beginning, the cost of attendance, subtract out your estimated family contribution number, and that gives us what your financial need is. So if the scary sticker price is $60,000 and your estimated family contribution number is $30,000, that means you have financial need of about $30,000. And then what our school will do is we will go through and try to fill that gap of financial need up as much as we can. Some schools can, meet full need for families. Not every school can. But that's kind of the equation that we go through when we're putting together an aid package for a family. And then what's included in this financial aid package? First, it would be any type of academic scholarships. So these are usually awarded by the admissions office since they are the ones that are actually reading the applications, going through the applications, learning about the student. So they develop and send to us what the academic scholarship would be. From there, again, we take a look and we do any type of need-based grants through the college. So we have, for instance, a Sienna grant that's need-based through us here. And many colleges are going to have specific things to them that are need-based grants. Also federal grants. So the federal grant is the federal Pell Grant. This number that you receive in a Pell Grant, if you do receive it, should be the same college to college to college. If you're eligible for the Pell, it should be the same across the board. And then state grants. This is going to vary depending on what state you're from. But if you're in New York, it is the New York State TAP Award. And this award is going to be based and should be the same across the board as long as you're attending a New York State college. So if you apply to a college in New York State and you apply to a college in Connecticut, you're going to notice that if you're receiving the New York State TAP Award, that it will be on the New York State college's letter, but not on the Connecticut letter. So you can't receive it if you're going to a college out of state. And then finally, the student loan options. Every freshman is eligible for $5,500 in a Stafford loan. There are two types of Stafford loans. One is the subsidized Stafford loan and one is the unsubsidized Stafford loan. Between the two, the maximum that a freshman can receive is $5,500. The subsidized Stafford loan does not accrue interest while the student's in school. The unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while the student's in school, but both of them would not have to be repaid until 6 months after graduation. These, while the one does accrue interest while the student is in school, the interest rates on these are typically low. This year it was 2.75%, so they're fairly low compared to other education loan options. And then after all of that, after the federal loans, you will then have a net cost. So as you can see on the screen, this net cost for the 2021 school year is $24,101. That's the net cost that you really want to take a look at. And what I actually recommend is kind of marking up all the financial aid award letters you get. Cross out anything that's a loan, cross out anything that you have to pay back, cross out work study if it's included in the net cost, because those are all things that you're either going to have to pay back or are not going to go towards the net cost. And that's that net cost number that you want to compare when you're looking at school to school to school. Federal College Work Study, as you can see on our letter, we actually separate it out at the bottom and don't include it in the net cost. The reason behind that is that our students, work and they receive a paycheck. So it doesn't go towards their bill directly. They can definitely use those funds towards their bill, but they're not going to start receiving those funds until they start working. It's usually honestly used, pizza money on the weekends. I've rarely, seen students really use it towards their bill, but Work Study is a great program. Basically, it's where a student would get a job on campus and earn funds. So we have actually Work Study students in our office that help us with financial aid things. So this is really great, but a lot of times I have seen other colleges include the Work Study in the net cost. So just be wary of that. And then payment and financing options. So these are going to vary school to school, but these are kind of the general financing options that are available. First are monthly payment plans. Almost every college at this point has a monthly payment plan. For instance, ours, there's no interest associated with it, and you can set it up. It's 2 to 6 months per semester, so you can set it up to 12 months for the full year, and there's just a $35 fee to set it up. So pretty easy to do, and this just basically breaks up that net cost that we just talked about across a bunch of months. And then loan options. two different types, both federal and private Parent Plus loans. So these would be loans that are in the parent's name for the student. Private education loans are typically in the student's name, and oftentimes, if not all of the time, they will need a co-signer unless they have some type of crazy credit that most 18-year-olds don't have. And then we also have families that do use home equity. If you're looking for a good place to kind of get started in terms of loans, most schools do have a list on their website of lenders they most typically see their students using. If your school doesn't, you're welcome to go to the Siena website. We do have that list, so that's always a good place to start. We do recommend the first year shopping around a little bit. You want to look for the best interest rate, make sure that the repayment terms and when you're starting to repay the loan works for your family. And then return on your investment, because really that's the most important part. This is a huge investment for families, and you want to make sure that the return on investment is what you expect it to be. So these are kind of the main key indicators that we really encourage families to make sure that they're looking at when they're making their final decision. So to kind of go through each one, retention rate, that's the number of students that started as freshmen at a college and then came back for their sophomore year. So to us, if you're coming back your sophomore year, that tells us that you enjoyed your time at Siena. It also tells us that when you were on your admissions visit and then came into your freshman year, that there wasn't much of a difference between the two. So you didn't come in freshman year and say, whoa, this was nothing like an admissions visit when I came. So really, this should be as high as possible. And with all of these, if there's ever a lower number or a high number, depending on what it is, you can always ask the admissions office to kind of see, why is that so low? What kind of things to look out for? For your graduation rate, this is obviously a very important one and really can have a huge financial impact if the graduation rate of a college is low. Really important if the college four-year graduation rate is low to ask the admissions counselors maybe why. Really why this is so important, and a lot of times they'll try to give you 5 or 6 year graduation rates, but this is really important because you don't want to be paying for 5 or 6 years in college. And really the reason behind that, beyond just the sticker price of it, is your students also losing wages in that 5th and 6th year, retirement savings, things like that. So really important to make sure of college's four-year graduation rate is important. A lot of times I have families say, my student graduated high school in 4 years, they're a great student, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't graduate college in 4 years, even if the graduation rate is low. It's really important to understand, though, that it's not just the student's fault a lot of the time as to why a graduation rate may be low. It can be low because they have poor advising, and a student was told, they could take a class the spring of their senior year, and then once they got past the fall of their senior year and went to register for classes, that classes wasn't offered. They need that class to graduate, so they have to stay another semester in the fall to get that class in. So things like this that you really just want to be able to mitigate if you do find the graduation rate at the school is low. Default rate, this is the percentage of students that are defaulting on their student loans at a college. So this is really important, and in opposed to the first two where you want it to be as high as possible, you want this default rate to be as low as possible. If a default rate is low, it's telling you that the students at these colleges are getting jobs, they're earning funds that they're then able to repay their student loans. Job placement rate, and admissions counselors for the job placement rate could even probably tell you the job placement rate percentage in the student's individual industry that they're looking at. So that's a really important question to ask, as well as starting salaries. These information sources at the bottom are really great non-biased sources. I always say, don't let us tell you, go and find the information yourself so that it's not biased. The College Scorecard and College Navigator will have the indicators that are listed above. And then College Factual is pretty cool. It puts away the time value of money and will actually give you a return on your investment as to what your degree will be worth in 30 years. All right, so at this point, we would normally open it up for questions. Since we can't do that, I just wanted to give you guys both my email address as well as my phone number. So if you have individual questions, even if your student isn't thinking about applying to Siena, I'm really happy to kind of talk you through any questions you may have about the FAFSA, the financial aid process in general, or just anything about the college admissions process. I'm always here, so feel free to shoot me an email, and I hope to see you guys in person next year.
Thank you to Kathleen, and hopefully many of the questions that were hovering on your mind have been answered. A few points I would like to add, however. For those of you who are taking notes about the CSS Profile, the additional financial aid form that some families may have to complete. Again, to reiterate what Kathleen said, you should only fill out that form if it is required by your school. For a complete list of schools that require the CSS Profile, you should navigate to the Suffern High School guidance page, click on College Corner, and that information is easily accessible there. Some of you may also be thinking about scholarships. We didn't talk about them so much tonight. Please know that the class of 2021 will have the opportunity to apply for over $100,000 in scholarships through our local process. And that happens in February and March of each year. I promise we will be back in touch with all of that information. In the meantime, if you are interested in searching for scholarships, please feel free to look through the scholarship list on Naviance and the National Scholarship Search on Naviance. That will give you trusted information on scholarship organizations and awards that kids can apply to. Finally, financial aid is a tough topic, and sometimes you have a very specific question. Of course, Kathleen Hassett Sienna is ready and willing to answer your questions, but also understand that RCC's Financial Aid Office services all of the communities in Rockland County. So if you have a financial aid question, feel free to give their office a call and they will be extremely helpful. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this information and it's helping you along in this process. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, the guidance office, Kathleen Hassett Sienna, or Rockland Community College's Financial Aid Office. Thanks so much.